Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alana, and on this channel, I review books. And in this video, I am going to be reviewing a favorite that I recently reread back in the spring that I've never done a proper review for. And that book is The Priory by Dorothy Whipple. Look at that stunning bookmark. I first read this book in November of 2019. And so I wanted to reread it, annotate it, and properly review this book. And here we are. This book has been mentioned in some of my former videos where I mentioned maybe my current favorite classics or something like that. This book was published in, I want to say late 1930s or early 1940s. The brink of World War II is when this book was published. So let's dive into this because we have a fair amount to discuss. If only you could have everything. If only you could keep the best of the old when you pass on to the new. So The Priory by Dorothy Whipple centers around the Marwoods. They are an old aristocratic English family. And the mother has passed away, so we have these two sisters, Christine and Penelope, who are living in this old, large priory with their father, Mr. Marwood, and their aunt, Victoria. And the priory is also called Saunby in this book. It's spelled Saunby, and as a East Coaster, Saunby, that AU, make it a diphthong. But it is steadily deteriorating due to neglect. Mr. Marwood only cares about cricket. Aunt Victoria is very eccentric and only cares about her paintings that she does, but her paintings are very bad, so that's why they never sell. But she thinks they're good. She thinks she has a talent. And so the sisters are left to themselves in this perfectly cozy bubble. They do have a brother, but the brother is only mentioned in passing. He lives elsewhere. Therefore they don't really have a close relationship at all with their brother. Christine and Penelope adore Saunby, but their father does decide to remarry. They also don't remember their mother, so they've grown up essentially with no mother. And this new wife of their father's, Anthea, destroys their once formerly tranquil existence. Christine and Penelope at this point are probably in their late teens, early 20s. And so they're at an age where they can actually seek out marriages of their own. However, they soon realize, because both girls, young women, marry very different types of men. Christine marries for love. For her, it was love at first sight. And Penelope marries for convenience. She marries for security and convenience, not for love. And these different decisions that they've made come with their own challenges. Also, Anthea, the woman that their father marries, also marries because would be considered an old maid at this time. And she realizes I'm not going to get another offer, so let me take this. It's a good old aristocratic family. Her family's more new money. And so Mr. Marwood, again, he also marries for convenience. So you have all of these marriages, and Dorothy Whipple is looking at how a woman's choice in marriage is a big deal, especially during this time period. So at the beginning of the novel, Christine and Penelope's innocence and naivety is very evident. Dorothy Whipple makes sure to almost overemphasize this, but not in a way that's written so that she doesn't feel like the reader couldn't figure it out. It's still well done, but she does really make this point. She uses descriptions of their clothing to portray a childlike purity and unawareness, as if so she looks at their clothing, their movements, their interactions with each other and then other people to portray this initial naivety. And then you see throughout the novel how life occurrences starts to strip away and eat away at this innocence. And you see that by how their clothing changes. And it's very interesting. You can map the changes. You can map how their clothing changes throughout the novel. That's also to kind of letting you know what's happening internally. In the beginning of the novel, they're wearing a lot of light colors, like white. And at the end of the novel, or middle towards the end, I actually remember some clothing pieces in particular, but one of the sisters now, she's wearing darker colors, navy blue, etc. They wore white linen dresses they had made themselves. They wore cheap, wide-brimmed straw hats. Their slender brown arms were bare. They looked free, untouched, and as if they might move away, like the young does, not afraid, but indifferent if you spoke to them. She stood for a moment in her familiar girl's life where she had been untouched, unconcerned, free. Then turning her back on it, she went downstairs. There is a scarecrow that makes an appearance from beginning to the end of this book. This is a woman scarecrow. So the scarecrow is dressed up as a woman, and she makes the appearances that she makes is significant. Again, Dorothy Whipple is using the scarecrow to directly parallel the state that the sisters are in. So as the book continues and more of life happens, there's more conflict that arises. The scarecrow, she was standing up straight at the beginning of the novel. She's bent over by the end of the novel. This especially parallels Christine. Because Christine, who married for love, her marriage out of the two sisters is actually the most complicated. Christine stood to look at the scarecrow, the mock woman. Side note, being called a mock woman, the scarecrow, is also significant because Christine is very, very young, and so she's still teetering between girlhood. So Dorothy Whipple called the scarecrow a mock woman on purpose. The mock woman walking still in the field under the wood. Time had touched her. She stooped as if she were old. She was thin, but she clasped her umbrella in the crook of her arm, kept the dog at her feet, and braved the weather. However, even though these girls do go through these new trials, experiences that they've never dealt with before because they had formerly lived such a sheltered life, these hardships do not completely alter their inner spirits. He felt a vast relief seeing her like this. It meant that though she had suffered, she was not embittered. She was still very young in being able to be so happy. Dorothy Whipple excels at mid-century English domestic fiction. This was the first Dorothy Whipple that I had read, and I have since read 2 of her other novels out of the 8, and all of them are English domestic bliss. But the Priory in particular takes a look, like I said earlier, about how choices in marriages, how one's choice in marriage has its consequences. And so the one who made the choice, both parties really, both husband and wife, have to abide by their decisions. There are a lot of women in this book, all with different backgrounds. There's even a young woman who was a maid that was a very random text message. I will answer that later. There is a maid who makes some decisions, and so she has to reap the consequences of her actions. And Thea has a friend who comes to stay at the Priory because this woman excels in childbirth and child rearing. This woman has chosen to remain unmarried. So there's a lot of women in this book, all marrying different types of people, and they all have their own struggles. Dorothy Whipple does this in a way that I think is expertly done, but also simply done. Nicholas was a stranger. A few months ago, she had never heard of him, and now she was going away with him, throwing her lot with his. What was love that made you think you could live with a stranger? Perhaps marriage, instead of being a union, is a separation. Perhaps it is the parting of the ways for lovers. Because of these decisions that were made in marriage, we see how there is a facade between how people are perceiving these relationships from the outside and what's actually happening behind closed doors. Funny, she thought. Nobody has everything. I know I haven't got what they've got. This lovely old place and their looks and the way they speak, but they haven't got what I've got either. The characters, especially Christine and her husband, Nicholas, go through the ringer. So I would say out of all of them, yes, Christine and Nicholas go through it the worst. But if I were to say what happens, it would be a massive spoiler because one instance leads to the next. And a lot of these events are tied in together. However, this book never feels depressing. And Dorothy Whipple in general, when you read her books, she knows how to cover certain topics without making you feel like you're just burdened by the book. It's actually a comforting read. There's a coziness to this story because Dorothy Whipple also puts in this, I've found in this and the other two novels of hers that I've read, there's this undercurrent of hope. So towards the end, you can tend to look towards like the light at the end of the tunnel. I believe in influences. Try not to fear, try to hope. Fear is bad. It weakens not only you, but the ones you fear for. At least that's what I think. Hope's good. It helps you and it helps them. Things are mysterious. Love sometimes has a wonderful power. Lastly, the Priory can be seen as a character of itself. I like it when I read a book and one of the buildings or one of the settings is like a character. Another book, if you were to look at houses that seem like characters, Jane Eyre, Thornfield Hall, it has its own atmosphere. It's this old, dilapidated estate that does have significance, especially to Christine. Out of all of the Marwoods, Christine appreciates the Priory the most, and she's the only one who first realizes that Sonby, the Priory, has lost its purpose. And through this, it's this emphasis of understanding what your purpose is, because if you deviate from that, you're going to fall into this decrepit state. And so the Priory symbolizes that. A lot of these characters lack purpose. They feel aimless, especially Nicholas. Penelope, in some ways, is aimless, even in her marriage. And this aimlessness causes them to treat others poorly, and to make poor decisions because they're projecting. Many a morning she sat at the fallen tree in the avenue, looking across to the Priory and thinking about it in the relation of her family to it. She saw for the first time that the history of Sonby was a sad one. It had been diverted from its purpose. It had been narrowed from a great purpose to a little one. It had been built for the service of God and the people, all people, but especially the poor. And now it serves only us, she thought. So, like I said, this is my second read of the Priory, and for me, the second read was better than the first time around. Like I said, even though these characters go through some things, it just never feels oppressive. It's just one of those quiet, cozy reads, but it has this emotional depth to it. And there is an important message about family, faith, and second chances, which I find in a lot of Dorothy Whipple's novels, even the ones I haven't read yet. When you look at the synopsis, now that I can look at the synopsis, now that I've read a few of her books, I'm thinking, okay, Dorothy Whipple is not one of those authors that's going to bring her characters through the ringer without something good coming out of it. And so she just sucks you right in with her simplicity, but it's evocative at the same time. And even though there are characters that are not always likable, she still knows how to make you feel sympathetic for them. For example, in her novel, Someone at a Distance, you have this woman who is committing adultery with a married man, but this woman is so miserable, you still feel bad for her. And Dorothy Whipple shows that even those people who from the outside look like horrible people or are horrible people in the way that they treat others, they're usually these wounded, hurt individuals on the inside. Yeah, I also like that Dorothy Whipple in the books that I've read, she will bring her characters to this cusp of just, they feel at their loneliest, they feel at their worst, they don't know what to do. And so they have to push beyond the physical and move to the spiritual, but it's never in a way that's preachy or contrived. She balances this element of faith and spirituality in a way that I feel is authentic, and I also like that. So yes, if you have been curious about Dorothy Whipple for a while, you gotta read her. She's so good. And I look forward to reading the rest of her novels. I don't own them. I'm only gonna start purchasing them as I plan to read them. But the next one that I plan to read is They Were Sisters, and I've heard that one is fantastic, and I will read that one next year. So I rated this one a 5 out of 5. I know, surprise, surprise, this is one of my favorite classics, one of my favorite books, and it is such a joy to read. Whipple is so underrated. You gotta give her a go. So have you read anything by Dorothy Whipple? Have you read The Priory? Is she on your list? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and feel free to follow me on Instagram, where I get up to more bookish shenanigans. All of my book reviews go there first, along with my monthly reading wrap-ups, my monthly TBRs, and of course, goofiness in the Instagram stories, because, I think funny memes are really what the internet is for. So with that, I'm going to sign off, and I will see you in the next one.